2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Charlie was just talking about this, the future's so bright, it's hard to see. And, it's so bright, they can't even talk about it. I mean, this is what's happening, such as a renaissance, such as a boom. And now it's details time. A lot of people have been looking forward to this session. I know some folks are just joining for this. We've got permitting on deck, and it's going to roll into the day's experts exchange, where we're going to continue to take questions. I know that this is a highly anticipated spot where a lot of you have questions already. So let's get to work and roll the sleeves up and talk permitting to set the stage. We have a triple team from DEQ who are going to go fast and furious on what you need to know to get smart on permitting and make these projects real. And I believe we still have Rex down there who's been doing a lot of work. We've seen a lot of tools, materials, and resources. And Rex is one of our stars. Rex, do you have a video, or are you gonna go audio only?
I unfortunately don't, but I do have a screen share, so I got the PowerPoint up when you're ready, Dan.
All right, awesome. Yeah, well, your voice is beautiful too, my friend, and your work is even more beautiful. I was really impressed in our pre-call, and I look forward to you getting the opportunity to show everyone what you guys have been putting together over there at DEQ. Some really, really terrific stuff. So
that's good.
Yeah, go ahead, take it away, Rex.
All right, I want me to go ahead and start. Let me share my screen here. All right.
Looks good.
Dan, all right, sounds good. I'll go ahead and kick things off then for us. So as Dan said, my name is Rex Robichaux. I'm the GIS administrator here at Virginia DEQ, and I'm excited to be able to share with you all a variety of new tools and updates that we've made available really over just the past few months. The agency recently went through a external website redesign effort, and but as a separate effort from that, we also took that as an opportunity to revise all of our public-facing geospatial tools that we make available. So with that said, I want to take a few minutes today to kind of show you some of those resources. First and foremost, I want to talk about what we call the Environmental Data Hub. And really what the Environmental Data Hub is a central landing point or location where the public and interested stakeholders can come in and access our information, whether that be in spatial or non-spatial format, and whether that's to download the data to extend and use further locally if you're a GIS user, a Google Earth user, things like that. Or if you just want to use our tools that we make available on the web, you can do that as well. So the Environmental Data Hub really is the place that anybody can go and find everything I'm going to show you. Here we make our available our open data portal, as well as those interactive tools. And I'm going to wrap up today by actually taking some time to demo some of these for you as well. So some general high-level architecture discussion here to kind of help wrap your head around this environment a little better. So it's really the Environmental Data Hub itself can, again, be thought of kind of that landing or organizational website through which you can find the two other, I would call, primary components of our offerings. One would be what we call the Open Data Portal, and that's where you're going to go if you want to actually do some querying or downloading of our spatial data to download it locally in a variety of formats. Or if you don't really want to download it, or if you want to further interact and visualize it alongside a lot of our other data on the web, you can use the Environmental Data Mapper. And that's our interactive web mapping application that we're offering for the public. Many of you may or may not be familiar with our legacy suite of web mapping tools, which was called VGIS. VGIS is actually, it's been deprecated. It's technically still available, but it's going to be fully retired and no longer available after April 1st. We've been suggesting for quite a while to kind of help people over to the Environmental Data Mapper to get them used to, because although I think it offers some enhanced functionality and a whole swath of new data sets, it is a new experience, so it takes a little time to get used to. So if you're a traditional VGIS user and you're familiar with our old external web mapping tools like VGIS WIMBY and stuff like that, the EDM or environmental data mapper is going to be where you want to go now. So I just mentioned one of the primary components here is the Open Data Portal. This we're really excited about. We're currently showing over 50 of our DEQ data layers available in geospatial format within the Open Data Portal. We have a list, I'm actually looking at the list right now, of at least probably 10 or 11 other layers that we have plans to make available once we finish up some internal data development efforts here at DEQ. I would expect to see those either all or most of those added probably within the next 12 months. So we're excited to have a nice roadmap of additional data sets that we'll be making available as well. All of the data that you can find in the Open Data Portal is available for download in either shapefile, if you're a kind of an open source GIS user, KML, KMZ if you're a Google Earth user, or CSV if you just want to see the data in attribute format with, for example, if it's a point, it will contain like the latitude and longitude locations for those data points. Lastly, we also offer API access to these layers as a component of this Open Data Portal, wherein if you're a developer or if you want to be doing your own web development or GIS development, you can actually tie directly to our what we call REST services to pull the data directly rather than downloading it as a static download. This is just a little view of what the prior functionality looked like before we upgraded to the Open Data Portal. I mean, it met the essential needs. It was kind of a static download that was updated nightly in most cases. As you see, some of these data sets were growing a little bit out of date, I suppose. And there were a few other limitations here. One is there was no preview. You couldn't really see what was available or what was contained in these data sets. So you really had to know what these stood for and what was contained within them. Whereas now you can get the full preview spatially and attribute before you ever download it to make sure it's what you're really looking for. You also were constrained to the format that you downloaded. And a lot of these, that would be a file geodatabase. So unless you're an Esri GIS user, if you're familiar with that technology stack, you may have been kind of out of luck working with this data. So we're really excited to kind of move past those limitations with this new platform. Pivoting here just a little bit, here's the environmental data mapper. This again is our interactive web mapping application that will be replacing VGIS WIMBY. It serves to offer our citizens and stakeholders really that full level of interactive access to all of our geospatial data layers. We're going to take, again, a very quick look in the concerns of time today at this, but this is publicly available. So if you'd like to open it up and follow along and interact with these tools as we're going through them, I highly encourage you to do so. A few more things about the environmental data mapper, from the 10,000-foot view. We actually make even more layers available here than we do for download. And that's because we really, for the most part, only want to offer the data layers that DEQ owns or maintains for download. But in the environmental data mapper, it can a lot of times be advantageous to pull in other externally available data sets. So we're looking at things like RCRA data from EPA, Superfund sites, Virginia parcel data. A lot of, if you're familiar with VGIN, their aerial imagery, things like that. We're able to pull all those in so you can visualize and interact with these externally relevant data sets right alongside our DEQ data as well. And just as the nature of the framework of this application, you can interact with all of this data both in spatial formats as well as non-spatial through the attribute table. So it really gives you a full 360 view of the information that you're interested in. So with that said, I'll go ahead and switch over. I want to take some time to actually show you some of these tools. So I'll start here at the Environmental Data Hub. And again, this will be the landing page that you go to. The link to all of these resources is included in the end of the PowerPoint. But for those who, if you have difficulty seeing it, it's geohub-vadeq.hub.arcgis.com. Again, that will take you to this main landing page. And this is really just kind of the main organizational landing page where it kind of help you understand, do you want to look for data to download it, or do you want to see some of our featured content, some of the story maps and things like that the DEQ has been working on? Or would you like to work with our interactive tools? So if you know what you're looking for, you can search for it. And it has a nice filtered kind of search return to help you find exactly what you're looking for. But say you don't know what you're looking for exactly, or you might be interested in finding relevant metadata or information that describes our data sets in a little bit more detail. For that, I would suggest actually clicking on the Open Data Portal tab, which will bring you in our Open Data Portal landing page. Here again, you can search for data, or you can kind of drill down into these logical areas that are subdivided to kind of represent the logical business subdivisions within DEQ, or the main program. So we have land data sets, pollution response data sets, renewable energy data sets, and water data sets, as well as some kind of administrative or external reference data that we're making available for reference or as a convenience that may be coming from external sources. So if I were to click any of these, I'll just go into our pollution response data set real quick to show you. You'll see the layers. In this case, we only have one that meets this criteria currently, but these are our pollution response reports. You can either go to the data or open up the fact sheet. So if I click view the fact sheet, it will actually open up either a PDF or a Word document that contains the relevant metadata that explains to you what this data set is. I'd say the vast majority of our data sets have these fact sheets available. We're currently working on the renewable energy data sets fact sheet at this time, so that's up and coming in the very near future. Just a recently added layer, so we're still working on finishing up that. So if you saw that, I went back and now I've clicked on air and renewable energy related data sets. So here's our two that we currently make available for download. Renewable energy permits, obviously probably being of most interest. Again, we'll be bringing that fact sheet live soon. And if you click go to the data, it's actually going to take you to the interactive download page that we saw a screenshot of earlier. So it gives you some nice metadata, tells you how recently it's been updated, the total feature count. And now you can also, even in this small inset map, click it to get information about that permit. So you can see the permit name, permit number, some relevant information, megawatts, the total acreages of this permitted project, the type, and status. So a lot of good information, as well as some additional kind of geographical relevant info. Recently, we also started tracking an attribute that will display whether or not a permit meets the Section 130 classification. That might be of interest to some folks on this call. So again, you can preview everything here in this inset map. I can also expand this data tab and start actually working with the data itself. So this supports filtering. So if you knew that you were interested only in a certain permit, say acreage range or megawatt range, you could apply a filter to filter on that. But for this example, let's just say that we want to filter only on permit active. So now I've done that, it's actually eliminated everything else. So now we're down to our 87 actual active permits. And if you could have seen that up there, the map is also dynamically updated. What's nice about this is it allows you to do some basic kind of reporting or querying at this level, so you don't have to do it later. So now you can go in here and hit download, and we get two options. We get the full data set, and again, like a CSV or Excel spreadsheet file, a Google Earth file, and then a shape file, so geospatial type native format. Or I can download the filter data set, which would be just the data set now with that filter applied. So if I were to download any of these, we can download it, and you'll see there it's already coming down. And then we could open up, and it's going to feature the full attribution, in this case in CSV file format, of what you're looking at. So I'd love to dig into this a little bit more, but again, in the concerns of time today, I want to jump over to my last topic here. This is the environmental data mapper. And again, this is really your one-stop shop for interactive visualization of our data. So it supports location lookup. You can enter in addresses, latitude, longitude coordinates. It features the typical kinds of tools you would expect to be able to do in a web mapping platform. You can select features spatially or by their attributes. You can measure, print out, change base maps, do some markup, basic buffer analysis, things like that. And by default, all of our DEQ data layers load and expand, but just know that down here at the bottom, there's the external data layers you can expand to get some more real estate. And here you can find all that external data. So we can turn on the most recent aerial imagery, for example, as well as some of those data sets coming from places like US Army Corps of Engineers or US EPA. For renewable energy permit layers, you'll want to expand the renewable energy layers group. And then all you have to do is check on these points. It's checked on both the renewable energy permits themselves. And if you wanted to see what these various classifications stand for, you can expand it to see what that means. And likewise, I've also turned on the coastal avian protection zones that we get from our coastal zone management bunch. And again, I mentioned that we can view everything in the attribute table here as well. So all I did is click on that ellipses, open attribute table, and now we're looking at the attributes that correspond with this featured set that we have open. Last but not least, you can do filtering. You can sort on columns and apply, attribute filters to further whittle down, kind of like what we just did in the open data portal. Once you have things selected, there's a variety of ways here that you can export this data to formats like CSV, just like we just did. But this allows you more of a finer resolution tool to really parse out exactly what you're looking for. And say select, a niche spatial subset of data or a niche subset off of their attributes, things like that. So here I've selected 11 renewable energy permits. I'm kind of between Charlottesville and Richmond area. If I wanted to export these, I can do so to a variety of formats, CSV, JSON, or GeoJSON, which you can, convert and import into things like ArcGIS or Google Earth, things of that nature. Again, I know this was a very quick run through with a lot of information, but I hope it was helpful for everybody. At this point, probably want to hand it back over to Dan, our next presenter.
Yeah, Rex, while we tee up our next presenter, can you just take this moment to go back and show folks how to get to all that again? Just wind it back and show us how to jump into the new website.
Absolutely. So one thing to note at the end of this slide deck, which I think will be made available, I've included links to these 3 primary pages I've shown: the environmental data mapper. So that's the interactive app we were just looking at, the environmental data hub, that main landing page here, and then the open data portal, which again can be found through a tab navigation once you're at our actual environmental data hub, but also included the URL, for everyone's reference. But the easiest way, again, would just be to bookmark this URL once you have it saved. But again, that URL is geohub-vadeq.hub.arcgis.com, and that will take you back to this, again, the main kind of landing page.
Perfect, Rex. Could you drop that in the chat? Go ahead, copy and paste that, drop it in the chat. And yeah, just to underscore what you said, we will be sharing your presentation. Everybody's going to get these links and all the other links that you've ever seen in every presentation so far, and every other session yet to come. So stay tuned. But yeah, go ahead, drop it in the chat, make it available to folks now. I'm sure they want to get to it tonight.
Perfect. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah, thank you, Rex. Great stuff, and keep up the good work over there. It takes a village, and it's not just solar innovation and remediation. We need all kinds of tech. So thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And all the folks working with you on that effort. We need the data. All right. So help me out. Is Mary, or I think it's Aaron. Aaron, are you stepping in next?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, loud and clear.
All right. So I'm ready to share my screen when you guys are ready to learn about permitting.
Please do.
All righty.
I've been waiting.
All right.
There it
Try
is.
to turn this. There we go.
Looks
Okay.
good. Thank you.
You're welcome. So thanks, Dan. My name is Erin Belt. I am the program manager for the Office of Stormwater Management here at DEQ. I think I know quite a few of you. Some of you may remember my predecessor, Jamie Robb. She is still in the stormwater program but has moved over to our Piedmont office. I've been in stormwater for quite some years. Previously as an inspector, I did do some plan review and now serve the agency in this position. So I wanted to talk a little bit about our programs. a little bit about legislative and regulatory information, and then spend some time on process. So for those of you that are familiar with DEQ's programs regarding land disturbing activity, we have two primary programs at the agency. We have the state-only Virginia Erosion and Sediment Control Program. All localities in Virginia serve as a VESCP. DEQ serves as the Erosion and Sediment Control Authority for state, federal, and for annual standard and specification entities. And then we always like to point out when folks come to us with questions about erosion and sediment control that local VESCP authorities have the option to adopt a more stringent local ordinance. So they must comply with the state minimum requirements for land disturbing thresholds, but they have the option to be more stringent. When it comes to the stormwater management program, the VSMP program, this can be DEQ or it can be a locality. So localities that operate an MS4 permit were required by law to adopt a stormwater program, but localities that don't have an MS4 permit had the option to adopt. So you'll find across the state that there are localities that adopted a stormwater program, but they weren't required to. And again, if you come to DEQ with questions about how a locality operates their stormwater program, keep in mind that those programs operate as an extension of DEQ's overall stormwater program. And we do provide them technical assistance, but we allow them to also adopt more stringent local ordinances related to stormwater quality and quantity. We have a couple localities that have done that. Virginia Beach is probably one of the newest examples of a locality that has gone through the process of mapping all of their watersheds and have a more stringent technical requirement related to post-construction stormwater. And wanted to point out that overall, there are three parts to these programs. We've got the Erosion and Sediment Control Program, which is a state-only program. Then we have the Post-Construction Stormwater Management Program that focuses on stormwater quality and quantity in post-construction. That's also a state-only program. The piece of our program that's based on the federal NIPDES Construction General Permit, that's that state permit during construction that you obtain from DEQ. So this is the most exciting part of my job, is explaining laws and regulations to both the public and the regulated community. So in terms of legislative and regulatory processes, legislation is telling us what we have to do as an agency or what an entity has to do that's regulated. And then the regs tell us generally how to do it. After regulations, you might find guidance documents or fact sheets that help determine what that process is. When you're looking at the legislative information system, and that link is at the bottom of the page there for the LIS page, one of the things to think about is that when we are in the middle of regulatory actions like the construction stormwater program is right now, if you're looking at the statutory or legislative language, you may see where it says for effective date or for contingent effective date. So I wanted to just point out that if you're looking at the statute or law, there may be two parts under the stormwater legislation, and there may be two parts under the erosion and sediment control legislation. So we're under an active regulatory process at this time to consolidate the erosion and sediment control and stormwater management programs. So when trying to figure out what the legislative language is that's active and accurate, anything that says for expiration is the current statute. Anything that says for effective date or for contingent effective date is not active at this time. So moving on to definitions. If you've tried to navigate stormwater definitions in the past, you've likely seen that there are oodles of them. We have a lot less erosion and sediment control definitions. We do recognize that there are some definitions under the erosion and sediment control laws and regs that do not completely jive with the stormwater laws and regs definitions. And that's something that we're trying to fix in this consolidated effort. But the primary goal of talking about definitions is that in longer detailed definitions, the example here that I have is about the stormwater conveyance system, is that there are some terms and phrases inside of the definition itself that are further defined. That can be a little bit confusing, but what it does, if you can take the time to go back through the overall definitions, is determine what compliance means. So, you know, a lot of times we get questions that say, what does this mean? But taking a little bit of time to read definitions and look for those, you know, phrases and terms that may be further defined can help you figure out the answer. This stormwater conveyance system has 3 subparts, and each of those green colored phrases and words are further defined in the definition section of the stormwater regulations. So this is what I wanted to spend most of the time on today. When we have, and I say we meaning me and my staff, I do have one solar plan reviewer that is well-trained and been doing this for years. Thankfully, DEQ has been able to acquire 3 additional staff members to do plan review, and they're in the process of getting trained to do this. So yay for DEQ, we now have more resources. But in terms of process, most of the time when we get inquiries from developers and designers, the first question is, how do I get my permit? It's a great question, but there are a lot of moving parts related to that. By the time you get to DEQ Office of Stormwater Management, there is a significant amount of work that should have already taken place before you come to us for stormwater plan review. And I would wager this is also the case if you're going to a locality that serves as a VSMP authority, where they will also review your stormwater management at the locality level. So when we have folks ask us this question, my response is, have you gone through the planning and zoning process at the locality? And if the answer is no, there's not much I'm going to be able to help you with at that point in time. But what I can do is give you an idea of what you need to do to reach out to the locality and start that planning and zoning process. There may be a conditional use permit or special use permit process that takes place through the local boards. You may have to negotiate lease agreements. Again, all of these activities very early in that process are not subject to DEQ oversight. The part that we can help with is the stormwater plan review. And if you are a state or federal entity, likely the erosion and sediment control review as well. So pre-applications are not required. We've started offering these up to folks because it helps developers that are not familiar with this stormwater process, not familiar with the permitting process, to have those discussions up front. It helps us manage expectations and time. Then you'd have your formal submittal. This may include DEQ if we are the Virginia Stormwater Management Program Authority, or it may go directly to the locality. And then the meat and potatoes of all of this process is the plan review process. We try to answer questions as much as possible during plan review, ahead of plan review, and provide comment letters back to applicants that are extremely thorough. Our primary goal is documentation of compliance. I can tell you without a doubt that none of my staff or myself, when we provide plan review to designers and developers, do we want you guys to have to resubmit. Our goal is to get you in and get you out, but also make sure that we have documented compliance, because that lets us know as the regulator that you're meeting all of the intent of the laws and regs, but then also it's a safety net for you as well. All the construction general permits are issued by DEQ. So if you go to a locality that operates as an erosion and sediment control entity, as well as a stormwater management entity, they may do the administration of your permit. So they may ask you for your documents, they may enter all that information into the permitting database, but every permit that is listed in the database for construction general permit coverage is touched by my 2 permit staff. So statewide, we currently have about 5,000 active permits for construction stormwater management at this time. My 2 staff members have touched every single one of those at least once. So once you get your permit issued by DEQ, you'll get your local land disturbing permit issued by the locality for erosion and sediment control. They may require you to post a bond. They may require you to only open up certain amounts of acreage at any one time. That's likely going to be a part of the conditional use process that took place at the beginning. But you'll go through your active construction. The whole time that you are actively constructing a project, you should be working towards final stabilization and then converting those temporary sediment measures, like a sediment trap would go away and a sediment basin would get converted in most cases, and then process your notice of termination. And a lot of that notice of termination process is going to involve things like documenting your construction record drawings, making sure that your facilities were actually converted properly, and providing that information to DEQ so that we can process that termination, get your BMP maintenance agreements executed and recorded with the local land records, and then you might be done. So there is the option that some folks come back to us and ask us for a modification. So maybe you want to add battery storage, maybe you want to expand your solar array. That modification process is open to everyone. We have a lot of projects that come to us and say, hey, we thought we were going to produce enough megawattage in post-construction, but it looks like we need 100 extra acres. We get those requests a lot. And then these are some of the issues that my staff and I have run into through the years with our experience with solar. So communication is one of the biggest issues that we see across the board, where the folks that are doing the work in the field may not be communicating with what the developer's expectations are, or the design work that's conducted by the A&E firms are not actually working with the contractors who are making red line changes in the plans. And all of that adds confusion to the on-site activity, as well as when folks come to do their inspections to determine compliance in the field. So part of that goes along with project management. When you come to DEQ for a stormwater plan review, the part of the project management that we involve ourselves in is the stormwater piece. So if you want to do expedited review with DEQ, any of your projects that are 100 acres of disturbance or greater can opt to choose that expedited review process, which is significantly more expensive, but is a faster review time than traditional review. It only encumbers stormwater to move faster. So if you've not had this conversation with a local erosion and sediment control program about your expectations for an expedited review and whether they can accommodate that, there's going to be some disappointment there for you. If the locality does not work directly with VDOT to coordinate plan review and comments where you may intersect a VDOT right-of-way, there's going to be some disappointment there. And all of that plays into expectation management. So if you're looking at a timetable on when you want to get your substation on online so that you can get that energy production and be first, to connect in that area, we recognize that that's the goal. We recognize that that substation needs to be on board and then the panels can come in simultaneously or later. But processing always takes time, and we can only work as fast as the slowest piece of the puzzle. So the last piece I wanted to talk about is policies, procedures, laws, and regs. And we have folks that disagree with our regulations. They disagree with the agency's interpretation of the regulations. We get it. We love discussion, discussing these pieces and how they fit together to document compliance. But if you don't know the policies and procedures, ask. If you don't know someone who can answer them for you, ask again. And if you don't know someone who works in Virginia or who has experience, or you can't get a hold of me or any of my staff members that work on this, just ask again, send another email, make another phone call. We have quite a few projects coming to us and begging us for our time. So I've had to turn some folks away and say, listen, I'm sorry, I can't take the call today. I may not be able to take the call tomorrow, but we will make time for you. It's the harder part is if you're under a deadline and you have to talk today, there's going to be some disappointment. So all of that to say that project management, expectation management, knowing what's required, and then communicating is the best way to get through the process. Our goal is to get you in and out. We don't want you to hang around. We have so many other people that want our time and want our review that we just don't have time to let things linger. And with that, if you still have questions and want to talk offline, this is my contact information. Like Rex mentioned earlier, DEQ's website is currently under construction at this point, and we are working through getting some of our primary pages up and running. The benefit for stormwater is that we also host a website in conjunction with Virginia Tech, and we call that the Virginia BMP Clearinghouse website. So if you're looking for common forms, if you are looking for links to LIS, if you're looking for resources that you want to learn more about the Virginia runoff reduction method, what we call our Part 2B technical criteria, there are a significant number of links on the BMP Clearinghouse website, but also on the news tab, you can find some of those forms that we would traditionally host on the DEQ website, but we're just not there yet with the stormwater page. All right, so Dan, I am ready to turn this over to Beth if she is ready to host.
Thank you, Erin. Yeah, great job.
Thanks.
Smooth presentation. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. I am trying to stop sharing.
Felt like we were on the radio.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me invite Beth in. I know we've had some hurdles to overcome with Beth, but we've got our star ace on the case, Kelsey. And while we're tuning it up, I'll just chime in with a personal anecdote about communication. Tony LaRussa, shout out Cardinal Nation, did some leadership training with him at one time. You may not know, while he played minor league baseball, he also went to law school at night. And we talked about communication, and he traded for the MLB all-time steals leader, Ricky Henderson. And in their first game, they're sending in the signals. He's on first base. Ricky's on first base. Are they going to send in a second to try to steal or not? And they send in the signal to steal. They changed their mind, so they sent in the takeoff sign. And so that meant to cancel the last sign, take off the last sign and just play normally. But Ricky stole second base. And then Ricky got knocked in. He came around, scored the run. And Tony, as he's coming back to the dugout, he asked Ricky, what happened? We sent in the takeoff sign. And Ricky looked Tony dead in the face and said, yeah, it took off. So communication, even at elite levels, amongst the greatest, sometimes it's just ships passing in the net. So I hope that's helpful. How are we doing with Beth? We got Beth's presentation, I see. Beth, how's your audio? Come on into the conversation.
Good afternoon, Dan. Can you all hear me okay?
Sound perfect. Great. Yeah, please take it away.
Good, thank you. And Kelsey, thank you for offering to run the slides for me. I apologize for not having a camera as I've sat through the first couple of days of this wonderful webinar, and seeing all of these other state employees with cameras and pictures of that and all, I'm thinking, now how did that happen? I mean, I know this program's been short on funding, but if the agencies got handed cameras and they missed me, I'm gonna be very distressed. But it's probably just as good because y'all can't see my green hair. I'm surprised, Dan, you haven't mentioned St. Patty's Day once today, but that's okay. Happy St. Patty's Day to everybody. And we're, for this permitting program, it's hard for me to believe that it's been over 6 years since we've issued our first one. And I have to say how delighted I am to have heard all the earlier presentations and focus on pollinators and the land use issues and the real concentrated discussion about pollinators. Because Dan, you may recall back in 2019, when I first did the presentation at Brownfields to Brightfields, we were just moving into looking at encouraging pollinators and asking developers to really think about that as we moved forward with our pollinator scorecard and a number of other tools that we put together to do that. So I was really excited and very pleased to see all of the focus on pollinators as we move forward here, because this is a big land use issue, and that's, I think, going to be a pretty key aspect to how all of this pans out. Kelsey, if you could give me the next slide, please. So in a nutshell, real quick, for those of you that have been involved in this for a while, you will know that this is old data, but there's a context for it, and I'll get to it at the end of the process. But in 2012, the DEQ promulgated the Small Renewable Energy Project Solar Permit by Rule. This was a direct result of legislation mandated in 2009 that created the permit by rule in the first place. And the law instructed DEQ to adopt a wind permit first, which is why solar came in a couple of years later after the wind permit. We also have a combustion, small renewable energy combustion permit by rule. And in the 6.5 years I've been working on this, that we haven't issued one of those. We haven't even gotten any interest about that. So solar is where it's at. Next slide, please. So those of you that are new to this, of which I suspect there may be a few out there, but for the most part, we have a permit by rule, which is essentially a permit defined by regulation. And this particular regulation has 15 components, of which there are a couple of them listed there. Basically, when an application comes in to my desk, whatever is in those application documents are in essence your permit. And our rule is, or our role at this point is to make a determination as to whether or not your application is complete or incomplete. And we do this in conjunction with coordination with Department of Historic Resources, Department of Wildlife Resources, and Department of Conservation and Recreation. And if those sister agencies find some glaring omissions in your application documents, they will clarify that with me, let me know, and I will let you know where those shortcomings are. If they can be handled quickly within the 90-day time frame that we have for reviewing, it's a 90-day deadline by law. If we can address those shortfalls within that 90-day window, you submit the additional supplemental information and we will go ahead and authorize a complete application. If the information requires some more extensive mitigation plan development or some more extensive surveys, then we will issue a letter of incomplete and provide a very, very clear explanation of exactly why the application cannot be deemed complete and what you have to do to make it so. Next slide, please. So where are we? This, I got to tell you, this slide is already out of date because we just issued another PBR today. But in essence, we have issued a total of now 58 permits so far. 57 of them are solar. We've increased the megawattage by another 20 megawatts from what's listed there. The permitted acreage has increased another 200 acres. We're still at only 23 projects operational, at least as far as I've been notified, which leaves us with a little over 1,000 megawatts currently in operation. And we have 3 projects under construction. So if you look at that permitted acreage, the 32,000 acres, and you look back over the different permits that have been issued, some of those permits have impacted some pretty significant forest lands. Some of those permits have impacted some pretty significant agricultural lands. A number of those permits, however, have been done on previously disturbed lands, and so that's always a good thing. But when we look at this acreage, and if we can go to the next slide, that coupled with the potential total acreage based on the notices of intent that the agency has received and the total amount of projected megawatts, you can see that this is indeed a real land hog kind of program. It takes up a great deal of acreage, and the more we can integrate the types of land use concerns that have been discussed for the last couple of days, whether it's conservation lands, whether it's prime forest, prime agricultural lands, ensuring that we focus or encourage to the best of our ability development on previously disturbed lands. Hopefully the acreage that will be impacted as a result of and these are just the PBRs, notice that we have so far. That doesn't include all the new projected tsunami of PBRs that'll be coming as a result of the legislation passed last year under the Virginia and the new act for encouraging a whole lot more. I think the megawattage increases by about threefold as to what the state's projected megawatts are supposed to be under the new law. So it's a very, very dynamic and a very rapidly expanding program. In addition, I want to note the 130 permits. These are the 5 megawatts or less. We currently have 31 of those projects that we're aware of, representing over 100 megawatts. It's hard for us to know exactly how many of these are out there, because not everybody that's putting in anything slightly over 1 megawatt knows that they're actually covered under the PBR and that they have to notify us. So it might be that these 31 projects are really just the tip of the iceberg as to how many smaller projects are out there. For example, the school projects that were discussed earlier, we have issued a number of the Section 130 permits to the local school divisions that are wanting to put 1.5, 2, or 3 megawatts affiliated with the schools. But I'm sure there's a number of other industries. I read about newspaper clippings on articles all the time about some company that's decided to put an extra 1 megawatt to help facilitate their operations, and we haven't received any notification of it, and we really don't have the staff or the capability to go out and track that stuff down and really kind of put our arms around it. So there's probably a whole lot more out there that we're just not aware of. Next slide, please. So where do we stand right now? As I mentioned, the PBR was promulgated in 2012. And a year and a half ago in the fall, we convened a regulatory advisory panel to help us clarify some issues and get some outside stakeholder input as to how that regulation needed to be changed. The law is very clear that the permit fee is supposed to cover the entire operation of this program, and the current fee structure doesn't come anywhere close. So we knew that we had to address the fee structure under the regulation, and there was also a very robust discussion of a whole host of other issues that were talked about that resulted in the agency pulling together a proposed amendments, and one of those amendments happens to address assessments of ecological cores. Those are those prime forest lands that are already evaluated under the Virginia Natural Lands Assessment Program, and trying to get a handle on how many proposed PBRs are actually impacting those key forest lands. So applications that get submitted a year after this rule becomes effective, I have to admit 2020 and the COVID pandemic kind of threw a wrinkle in everybody's timeline. Nonetheless, the proposal stands, and the language in the proposed regulation is that for applications submitted 12 months after the effective date of the amendments, they will need to evaluate these ecological cores, and they will be required to complete the Virginia Solar Site Pollinator Bird Habitat Scorecard. They're not being mandated to plant pollinators, but as part of an evaluation as to the that they need to make this evaluation as part of their comprehensive natural resource review. And they will also need to take into account that T&E species as now defined under the PBR, will include insects. So that happens a year after these amendments become effective. So if, say, we're successful in having amendments become effective sometime this fall, it'll be the fall of 2022 for applications that are in the pipeline that'll need to begin to do these kinds of assessments. Next slide, please. We've obviously discussed the need for a new fee structure. So the proposal calls for a notice of intent fee of $2,000. The proposal calls for a base application fee of $7,500 plus a cost per megawatt affiliated with the project. Projects that are between 5 and 20 megawatts, that would be the base fee plus 150 per megawatt. And for projects over 200 megawatts, there would be the base fee cost plus the additional $165 per megawatt. And that would constitute the total permit fee. If there's a modification that needs to come in for your permit after it's been issued, that would reflect a 20% cost of the original application fee. If we need to issue an incomplete, and that's due to the applicant not coordinating up front very well with DHR or Game and Inland Fisheries, and really trying to push the application through the process before they've really done their due diligence. There's going to be a fee associated with that because it takes a lot of staff time to go back through and address those incomplete issues. That too will represent a fee of 20% of the original application fee. In addition, there will be an annual maintenance fee of $500 fee plus $15 per megawatts. And if I can have next slide, please. So one of the other amendments that we really wanted to clarify was information for permitting and issuing PBRs on previously disturbed land. It was mentioned earlier on in one of the sessions, either yesterday or early this morning, that there is, I think it was Vince who had talked about it, that for brownfield sites, there currently is coverage under Section 130, which only requires local government certification and a notice of intent for you to go on and build your facility regardless of the rated capacity. And so we issued a 20 megawatt, a 20 megawatt Section 130 permit to an applicant a year and a half ago that wants to build on old RECRA land over in York County. There was no comprehensive full PBR that needed to be done. That land had been previously disturbed, was a federal site, and then taken over by the state. And it had finally come out of its long-term monitoring plan. And so they're going to stick some solar panels on there. And that Section 130 covered that program for up to 20 megawatts. So under the new amendments, we are going to more clearly identify the ability to get a PBR on previously disturbed lands, provided you don't impact more than 10 acres of undisturbed land. So the current Section 130 lets you go up to 10 acres of disturbance before you need the full PBR. So if you're moving into a previously disturbed land, say it's an old peaking station area, and you need an additional 6 acres to do something with the substation or whatever, you would be able to do that under Section 130. However, if your peaking station required 12 acres of new virgin undisturbed land, then you would need to go back through the full PBR. So next slide. So you can see that this is the new proposed language, and I'm going to show you real quick here in a second how you can actually see all this stuff and comment on it. But you can go up to any megawatt, any rated capacity, but you can't impact anything more than 10 undisturbed acres. Next slide. So the proposal for this, the amendments to this regulation are currently open for public comment. And Kelsey's gonna be a real gem and do the live show of exactly how you can access that information and figure out how to provide comment. What you do first is you can just Google the Virginia Regulatory Town Hall. And this is what will come up. And if you, down underneath that, you see there's a clear link for regulatory activity. If you click that, it will take you to this screen and it will show you all the regulatory activities that are currently underway. You can scroll down until you get to the Department of Environmental Quality. This lists everything that's currently happening in the Commonwealth. You see under DEQ, there's only 2 actions that are going on right now. The second one is the Small Renewable Energy Projects Regulation. And if you go over to the right side of the screen and click stage, or not, wait, yeah, there we go, go to stage, and that will take you right to we're currently in the proposed stage. You can see the proposed text. You can click on the agency background document that explains everything, the Attorney General certification, DPB economic analysis, as well as the governor's review memo that came out of the executive review. If we scroll down just a little bit further, you will see there's that little flashing diamond down there. It's in progress. The public comment period ends on midnight of May 14th. So any comments received after that will not be considered. You can submit those comments directly to me. My email address is, if you go down a little bit further, you can see the contact information. And so I would strongly encourage, Kelsey, if we can go back up just real quick to the proposed text. If you click that on, it will show you the proposed language is the new underlined language. Old language, if we can scroll down a little bit till we can find something that's been struck out. There we go. DGIF, they've changed their name. They're now the Department of Wildlife Resources. So that definition gets struck. And you see we've got them under DWR in alphabetical order. So old language has the strike through it, and new language is underlined. And I encourage anyone that has any interest in solar development at all to please take the time to read the proposed language and submit public comments, because the new regulation will only be as good as the feedback and the information we get from the public. The other quick thing I want to do, because I constantly get calls from folks, given the new website design, is just to show you real quickly where you all can find all of the new PBR information. Similar thing, if you were to just Google Virginia DEQ, you'd get the Virginia DEQ website. And if we can click that on to our general website, you see the new and improved DEQ webpage. There's no listing there for renewable energy, as you see. So quickly click to permits, because what you want is information on the drop-down menu, and go to permits. And you will see under the blue tab, the permits listed. There's renewable energy. If you click that one, you see the renewable energy page. And also right under that blue tab, we've got the renewable energy project status. You can click that, and the very first hyperlink that you see right there gives you the complete Excel spreadsheet when it comes up.
Agree.
Where is it?
Oh, there we go.
There we go. Here it's coming.
Voila.
And there it is. You can see down at the bottom, you can get a listing of all notices of intent. You can get a listing of applications in review. You can see which PBRs have been issued. You can see which Section 130 permits have been issued. You can even see which notices of intent have been withdrawn. We even have a permit that's been withdrawn. All that data is available, and we update it every time we issue a new PBR. The web page is updated. And if we go into let's click issued permits. If all the way down, the little tab. Whatever one.
Let's take a look quickly, and then we'll pivot into our
Sorry, your audio broke up on my end. Which tab am I clicking?
Just the issued PBRs, right next to Section 130.
There we go.
Scroll down to the very bottom. Let me see if the one we issued today is already in there, because we sent it forward and it should be. Where is it?
Rochambeau.
No, not listed yet, but it will be very soon.
Thanks, Beth. This is terrific. Don't go away. Just hang tight. Along with Aaron and Rex, we're going to roll right into our Experts Exchange today, which we did yesterday. It was terrific and amazing. We're going to do it tomorrow, even bigger, to wrap up the entire 3 days. But
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed.